Well, it is the bill President Trump wants passed. So why, moments ago, did this so-called big, beautiful bill fail to pass? It failed to clear the House Budget Committee even. So this is the legislative package that is expected and really, quite simply put, needed to deliver President Trump's domestic priorities, things he promised on the campaign trail. President Trump earlier today posting to social media, Republicans must unite behind the one big, beautiful bill. He uses all caps there. He says we don't need grandstanders in the Republican Party. Stop talking and get it done. Now, two key votes came from these Republican Congress members, Representative Ralph Norman and Chip Roy. They are two conservatives who say the cuts don't go far enough. Other Republican no votes came from Representatives Clyde and Breachin. The proposed bill includes cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. That's a big part of this. It's all part of an effort to slash spending by at least $880 billion to help pay for the tax cut. So let's break this down now. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small. You have to anticipate that these no votes are also thinking about their constituents in their areas back home who are very vocal about any cuts to Medicaid.
Certainly, but I also should point out that there's one other Republican who voted no. I was looking down briefly because he just put a tweet out or a post on X clarifying his no vote. He initially voted yes, and this is Representative Lloyd Smucker. He changed the vote for procedural purposes. In his words, he said, "To be clear, I fully support the one big beautiful bill. I vote today in the Budget Committee as procedural requirement to preserve the committee's opportunity to reconsider the motion at a later date." The committee has since recessed since this bill failed to pass. And what we saw going into this was Representatives Chip Roy and Ralph Norman say that they were unsatisfied with just how deep the spending cuts were. It is interesting that you bring up that constituents' concerns about Medicaid was a part of the issue. For Roy specifically, he wanted to see deeper cuts to the program. He also argued that this failed to address reversing some of the tax credits that were delivered under the Biden administration as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. He's asking for those to be eliminated at a quicker timeline. They're also unsatisfied with the timeline that comes with these work requirements that were attached to Medicaid. He says he warned before this hearing that they, being Republican leadership, should consider recessing this to avoid this embarrassment. Now that the vote has happened and has failed, they're going into a recess. And he says he's still open to conversations beyond this, but he projected that he wasn't going to vote for this, and he stuck on those words, Reed.
It's fascinating that some of the most staunch red meat Republicans who are major Donald Trump supporters and backers and have been even throughout the campaign are saying that any cuts to Medicaid equal political suicide, Taurean. So what happens next?
Well, now that it did not receive a favorable recommendation, this bill is essentially dead. I'll have to look into what Smucker's words meant in terms of preserving this in order for it to be reconsidered. But it's clear that the language in some of the portions of this bill would have to be changed in order for it to satisfy Norman, Roy, Basheen, and Clyde in order to get their backing on this moving forward. What we know, though, is that House Speaker Mike Johnson has tested and weathered these storms before. He has previously never sent a bill to the floor without it getting the assurances that it would receive the votes necessary for it to pass. We saw this with the continuing resolution. We also saw this with the budget resolution that was kind of the precursor for this. He has been a master negotiator, as well as Vice President J.D. Vance has been directly involved in some of these negotiations. What hasn't happened yet, at least according to Representative Norman, is a conversation with President Trump. We asked him about that before he headed into this meeting to vote for this, and he said he hasn't spoken to him yet. As we know from Trump's Truth Social post that he wants Republicans to support this and has called any Republican opposing it grandstanders. It appears that those conversations could happen sooner than later, but as of now, we're just waiting for the fallout to happen from this failed vote.
So let's back up and sort of go through what this process is for our viewers to be just super clear. Bill is drafted, talked about, goes in committee. That's where it just failed. Then goes to the House. And then senators are waiting to catch the ball from there, Taurean. What have you heard from senators who now likely won't be catching the ball anytime soon?
Well, they won't be catching the ball anytime soon, and it wasn't clear whether or not those senators or there was enough votes in the Senate to support this bill anyway. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky was very vocal against this bill. He said, just like Roy's concerns, those spending cuts weren't deep enough. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri also put out an op-ed not too long ago criticizing cuts to Medicaid, saying that he's concerned morally about the implications of stripping beneficiaries from this program. There's also other senators like Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins who have been notably at odds with the party when it comes to President Trump's agenda. So it wasn't clear if there was support in the first place for this to pass that hurdle. Now that we're still back in the House and Speaker Johnson has previously set the deadline of Memorial Day weekend to get this passed, it's unclear if that timeline will stick, but we have all next week for that to be considered. We're hearing from staff that members were told to go home. They won't be working through the weekend, at least for now, so we'll see what that looks like when we come back next Monday.
Wow. CBS News congressional reporter Taurean Small, I have a feeling you will be reading and researching throughout this weekend as well. We appreciate you, my friend. Have a good one.